A very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to Tillotoma's Foundation. Uh, this is a global organization which is working in the areas of international relations, finance, environmental science, scientific and strategic defense policies, and several other areas. It's a global think tank and it deliberates on various burning issues. Today, we are discussing the Indo-US relation in the Biden-Harris era. Of course, it's quite a dynamic time to witness such a relation and the changes it might incur. I mean, are we finally getting the UNSC permanent seat? Are we getting the how are our relations with our so-called hostile neighbors, Pakistan and China, going to fare? What about the Indo-US economic and trade relations? We are going to deliberate on all these matters uh, today. With me are speakers Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar. He's a former Indian ambassador and a visiting and a distinguished fellow specializing in international trade and diplomacy at the Tillotoma Foundation. The next speaker would be Dr. Wael Awad. He's a noted journalist, winner of Freedom of Speech Award, and distinguished advisor of West Asia at the Tillotoma Foundation. Uh, Following which, we will have Mr. Jitain Kumar Ojha. Um, he's a former joint secretary and at the government of India, specializing in geopolitical analyst and visiting distinguished fellow at Tillotoma Foundation. So I'm going to request Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar to please come forward and enlighten us with what are the changes and the challenges of Indo-US relations in the coming Biden and Harris era. Over to you, sir.
Very well. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to Tilotoma Foundation for this invitation and also for organizing this webinar on this very, very important issue. Now, Madam Chair, you have mentioned that we are going to be discussing US-India relations. If I remember correctly, the title of the webinar was supposed to be US policy in South Asia under Biden-Harris administration. But I'm quite open, meaning if we want to discuss only India, I'm happy with that. But maybe if we were to broaden the scope a little bit to include also other countries of South Asia, I think that would give a holistic perspective to what we can expect from the Biden-Harris administration. So maybe I will speak, the 15, 20 minutes that you have very kindly given me. I'll speak a couple of minutes on relations also with Pakistan and with Afghanistan, because both these countries are important. They're a part of South Asia. And of course, they also impinge, US relations with these countries also impinge on relations between India and the United States. So what I'm going to do is maybe for the first few minutes, I will speak in general on relations between India and the United States, how they have evolved. Because obviously, it is always said that foreign policy is usually, it is formulated and conducted in a continuum normally. It is not that a new administration will come and throw away everything that was happening earlier and then start afresh. And similar is going to be the case as far as the Biden administration also is concerned. So let me see how the relations have evolved. Well, not exactly since 1947 or 1945, since India's independence, but more so over the last 20 odd years or so. But let me quickly say, that in the 1990s, there was a book that was published by one of the US ambassadors. He was experienced in this region. And the name of that book, the title of that book was Estranged Democracies. That means both India and the United States. These are democracies having similar values of freedom of speech, rule of law, elections, freedom of expression, freedom of religion, etc., etc. But still, they were estranged because the relations were not the best. We had seen what had happened in 1971. We had seen also on some other occasions, there were many ups and downs. Then in 2002, we had the US Deputy Secretary of State, Strobe Talbot, coming up with a book titled Engaged Democracies. That means the countries are having a dialogue, engaging with each other. When Prime Minister Vajpayee visited the United States in 2002, he called the two countries natural allies. When we had the first visit of President Barack Obama to India in 2010, he called the relation between the two countries as the defining partnership of the 21st century. So you can see from 1994, from estranged democracies, we have become a defining partnership in 2010. And when in 2016, Prime Minister Modi visited Washington, D.C., and he addressed the joint session of the US Congress, he termed the two countries, the relations, as an indispensable partnership. So this is what we have at the moment. There has been, as I said, from 1947 to 2000, there were a number of ups and downs in our bilateral ties. But since 2000, there has been a regular upward trend and upward trajectory, irrespective of who has been the president, whether it has been whoever has been in the White House, whoever has controlled the Congress. It has been a bipartisan support for improving and strengthening relations with India. So we had George W. Bush from 2000 to 2008, Republican, then Democrat Obama, then Republican Trump, and even before that we had Clinton when he came here in March 2000. I think that can be set as the watershed when our relations started improving. Similarly, in the Senate, in the House of Representatives, amongst the people and in business, also there has been this very strong support. In India also, whoever has been the prime minister or has formed the government at the center, irrespective of that, our relations have continued to grow. We had from 2000 to 2004, Mr. Vajpayee as the prime minister, then 10 years up to 2014, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and now from 2014 till now, it is Prime Minister Modi. So relations have continued to grow and to expand. When both countries are democracies, as I said, there's convergence of values. Now today, there is also a huge convergence of interest in terms of the huge market of India, which is seen by the United States, the possibilities of investment in India, the large quantities of bilateral trade between the two countries, the fight against terrorism, the defense cooperation, the defense partnership, the aggressive and the belligerent rise of China. So in terms, both the countries really need to work together in terms not of containing China, because I think it will not be possible to contain a big country, territorially so large, population so large, economically and militarily so large, to contain it, but to constrain it so that it becomes a more responsible player on the international scene. And then over the last 3-4 years, we have the Indo-Pacific, well, not exactly initiative or strategy, but the idea of the vision or the outlook of Indo-Pacific, which both the countries subscribe to, and the Quad of 4 countries. And we see how we need to take that forward. That is still work in progress. And then over technology and innovation. Of course, there are some differences, as Madam Chair, you mentioned about trade, about immigration, and so on and so forth. And I will try to briefly touch upon those also. You also, let me deal with that other question that you posed, Madam Chair, that whether India will become a member of the UN Security Council with the support of the Biden administration. So I would suggest that it is not the United States that is standing in the way really of India's membership of the UNSC. In fact, Barack Obama had very categorically announced in 2010 that as and when the UNSC is expanded, India would be a part of that expanded UN Security Council. So we know that there are other countries, it is particularly China, which as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, which has been standing in the way. So now I have spent 5 minutes. Next 7, 8 minutes, I'm going to spend on Biden, how the relations with India are going to go forward. And one or two general comments. I think what is going to happen when, as Biden has come in, that there is going to be more stability and more predictability as far as global ties are concerned, as far as international relations are concerned. There'll be no sort of impulsive and impetuous comments and statements that are going to emanate from the White House. So that is going to be good for the world, and that is going to be good for India and India-US relations. Second is that alliances will be strengthened, and that is what President Biden has said. This is what he has started working on. In fact, right from the time that the results were announced on the 7th of November, after that he spoke to allies first in Europe, then in East Asia, then India, etc. Basically, how we can work together and take the relationship forward. So in terms of the bilateral ties, I think a number of areas that we can look at where we will be able to take the relationship forward. I think the first, in terms of challenges that both India and the United States confront is the aggressiveness, as I mentioned, and the muscle flexing of China. And it is, there were a number of question marks that were earlier being raised as to how Biden administration is going to relate to China, because they have identified China as a competitor, Russia as a threat. But I think it'll be fair to say that the statements emanating from Biden, from the nominations and from the senior positions in the Biden administration, whether it is of Antony Blinken, the new Secretary of State, or it is Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, or it is General Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, that there is going to be no change in as far as relations between between the United States and China is concerned. The pushback, maybe the style might be slightly different, and also there might be possibilities of cooperating and collaborating on some issues like climate change, on some issues like nuclear security, and so on and so forth. But otherwise, as far as, let us say, the trade issues are concerned, it is the tariffs are not going to be brought down in a hurry. As far as issues related to the ambition of China to dominate over the South China Sea, I think that we will see quite a pushback, as we have already started seeing by the positioning and by the movement of the USS Nimitz in the South China Sea. As far as the relations, the aggressiveness against Japan is concerned, there also United States has said very clearly that they will stand with Japan, even as far as safeguarding the Senkaku Islands is concerned. We have seen that China has become very aggressive in violating the air defense zone of Taiwan. I think there also Biden will come in very strongly. the the criticism of China as far as violation of human rights in Hong Kong, in Xinjiang. Just before departure, Trump had defined the happenings in Xinjiang as genocide. And Antony Blinken has said that they have no intention of walking back from that. So I think the pushback in this and the pushback on as far as China's treatment of Tibet is concerned, that will also continue. The President Biden has said that during his term, he will also meet His Holiness Dalai Lama also. So I think that pushback against China will be there on trade as well as for on strategic issues. The good thing is that the pushback is not going to take place individually or in a solitary manner as Trump was doing. Mr. Biden will do it in an alliance, and of course he'll have to build those alliances. But of course, when it is the question of India and the United States working together on that, that of course will happen. The other aspects on between the two, there are, all of us are aware, there are more than, it's a strategic global partnership between India and the United States. There are more than 60 areas on which working groups have been established, and that will definitely go forward. I think we need to recognize that Joe Biden and all his senior officials know India very well. Joe Biden was the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee when the US-India civilian nuclear deal was being discussed and it was being passed through the Congress. And he played a very important role, a very significant role. He had said also in 2006 that he would like to see relations between India and the United States to be at their best in 2020. And it is quite fortuitous that he is himself become the president at the beginning of the third decade of the 21st century. So he knows India well. The people there know India well. Our officials here also know him. When Mr. Modi addressed the joint session of the US Congress, he was the chair of the Senate. He was the vice president. He was the one who hosted a lunch for him when the Prime Minister visited Washington, D.C. the first time in September 2014. So they have a very good personal chemistry also, and that will take it forward. Last couple of things on trade. Yes, the trade issues will continue to be there. I would very strongly suggest that India work toward finalizing a mini trade deal, as has been mentioned by the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, that he had said we are 1 or 2 telephone calls away from this. So I think that should definitely work. They should definitely work towards that. But trade will definitely not be such a highly volatile item as it used to be during President Trump's time, that the strategic content of the relation was to be kept to one side, and it was the trade volume of trade and trade deficit that US had with India, very minimal, about less than $20 billion, that would determine the overall scope of the overall content of the relationship. So trade will be there, but then we are, I'm sure there will be good conversations. Both the countries will work together on the Paris Accord, on climate change issues. H-1B immigration, we will see improvement, better things happening. Now, there have been a number of comments made that Kamala Harris, she is of Indian descent, she's of South Asian descent. There are more than 20 senior officials who have found a place in the White House from the Indian diaspora. Incidentally, Indian diaspora, we must keep in mind, is very important, significant in terms of enhancing and further deepening and strengthening our relations. But my point as far as the presence of Ms. Kamala Harris and the Indian diaspora in the White House is, that we should neither have very high hopes nor very high expectations. We should basically work on the basis that India-US relations are on an upward trajectory, and all of them, these, because they are ultimately American citizens, they will work for the interests of America. And so they will work for further strengthening the relations and taking the trajectory forward. Some people have mentioned about CAA, Article 370 Kashmir. I don't think that is really going to be an issue between the two governments. Even if it is, I think it is going to be not discussed openly and in public. There is going to be a respectable a conversation or dialogue between the two sides on these issues, where in an attempt and effort to understand the positions of the two sides. I don't think it is going to be, in any case, introduce a spanner in the works, so to say. Now, last couple of minutes, I would like to spend on relations with Afghanistan. So the National Security Advisor on 23rd January has said, Jake Sullivan has said, after his conversation with his counterpart in Afghanistan, that they are going to review the Doha deal that was signed on 29 February 2020 between the US administration and the Taliban. Now, this should not be misunderstood that Mr. Biden does not want to get out of Afghanistan, not at all. He has also been talking about an exit from the never-ending wars. But what the Pentagon has said and what the other senior officials have said, that they would like to exit in a responsible way, because they say that the commitments that Taliban had made, they have not been met. And those are basically having a ceasefire, not increase in violation, and that violation, not increase in violence, and that violence has been going up. Although Taliban has said that they are not to blame, because it is not them, it is ISIS and other terrorist organizations. They have also claimed that they have severed, as they had promised, their links with Al-Qaeda. But both NATO and Pentagon sources suggest that that has not been done. So I think there is going to be more conversation. Now, if there is this more conversation, a pressure that is to be applied on Afghanistan, on Taliban, and if the date of withdrawal has to go beyond May 2021, because the United States had accepted, had agreed that all their troops will leave by May 2021. Now there are only 2,500 American troops. At that time, there were 12,000. Now there are only 2,500. So this might get prolonged a little bit, because what the Biden administration is interested is that the gains of the last 20 years should be preserved and should be protected, like minority rights, like condition of women, like education for the girl child, and so on and so forth. So I think this is where it is. And then this brings me also to Pakistan. I think, again, it will be more of a transactional sort of a relationship with Pakistan that Biden will have, maybe something similar to the last 2 years of the Trump administration, which was that you incentivize Pakistan to come on board as far as providing a conduit or a link in terms of bringing the Taliban to the negotiating table. And if this date has to shift from May 2021 onwards, then I think Pakistan will become necessary. In his confirmation hearing, the Secretary of Defense, General Lloyd Austin, he said he dangled a few carrots in front of Pakistan, saying that we will give them, support them in military education and training, and we will have a good working relationship with the Pakistan military, but we will also apply pressure on them so that they do not provide safe havens to terrorists and so on and so forth. So I think it will be a transactional sort of a relationship, not based on what Pakistan by itself can offer, which is precious little, but how it can help and support the United States in trying to extricate itself in a responsible way, as it has been put by the US forces. So I see that my 20 minutes are up, Madam Chair. And what I've tried to do is that in this short time, try to look at how the relations with India are going to be, and that I have predicted that they are going to be on the upward trend, and there are going to be no hiccups. Is going to be much more stable, much more predictable. With Afghanistan also, I think it is the same, but India has always wanted in Afghanistan an Afghan-led, Afghan-owned, Afghan-controlled peace process. And I think we'll be able to work together with the Biden administration to ensure that the gains of the last 20 years are not frittered away. And with Pakistan, if the pressure on Pakistan to give up on terrorism, to support to terrorism, I think that will be extremely good. So let me finish here. Thank you very much. And I'll be happy to respond to any questions that you or any of the participants might have. Thank you.
Perfect, Ambassador Sajjan. That was a perfect timing. Uh, and
Thank you.
you have offered a clarification on a whole lot of areas. And of course, Biden-Harris administration looks very promising and optimistic for South Asia. Our next speaker is Dr. Wail Awad. Like I've mentioned, he's a noted journalist. And what a coincidence, Dr. Awad, that you're speaking on the day after Rihanna makes a mention of the farmer protests in India, and the whole Twitter is ablaze. As a journalist, I would like your viewpoint on that aspect, and what would be your prediction of the trajectory of, again, US South Asia administration in the near future? Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pooja. Thank you for Ambassador Ashok. He has already elaborated and have touched most of the point which anybody would echo and will agree in totality with him, whatever he have said. And thank you for the Tillotoma Foundation for making this seminar. I think what we are going to discuss here are the two important issues for a new administration in the United States. One is the local issues, and one will be the international or the foreign policy of the United States. I think the COVID-19 crisis in the United States is one of the major hurdle for any administration to come, and therefore there would be a big challenge to settle their homes in order, and especially with the Trump era is being erased and should be erased from the American history, because he was an unwanted genes in the American foreign policy or an American administration. But here we are in a capitalism. We'll always have different kind of a president where they can. Having said that, I would say that yes, he will concentrate internally on setting his up issues. He will concentrate on bringing America back onto their own feet, in bolstering the industrial and the technological strength of the United States, and lots of investment will be in the R&D. So therefore, we can see the America wanted to dominate as a supreme power, at least militarily for the time being, till they are able to set their economy. So I think whatever we have been trying to say here, the American foreign policy actually is being drafted by the arm industry, by the Pentagon, and by the FBI and the CIA. So therefore, we don't see much of the American administration actually doing much of changes of any presidents in power. But I think the Democratic Party would like to have also more of the saying of their traditional policy in dealing with issue, especially when it is now more focused on anti-China policy, because it's the American foreign policy now, Asia Pacific. We have seen the American warships going now toward the Nimitz has been already gone to South China Sea. So there is a strengthening of the American position in the South China Sea, where there is a turbulent, where there is a disputes with the neighbor. So the United States, whatever the outcome of the United States conflict with China, will definitely have an impact on the South and the South Asian and the regions. So therefore, we will see that the American administration searching for a transatlantic alliance and where the United States wanted to prove to its credential to its allies in the region that it is remaining the supreme power and it is remaining the only power that they can counter the Chinese influence. So therefore, you see the Quad have come up in the Australian, Japan, India, and the United States at one side to counter the Chinese influence. And then you will have also the issues of the democracy, the issues of human rights issue, where you have asked about the farmers. Yes, it's not only that it may be for the Biden administration, he focused more on the value of democracy, the value of human rights, the value of rights promotion. So there will be a watch list on his radars, like we can say Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal. These are the country, Myanmar now, a new angle has been added to South Asian affairs. So all this will be of a major focus of the democratic institute and the violation of human rights. India, yes, they may go soft in India. It may not be as hard as we may expect because the administration, at least for the coming 100 days, will be cautioning most of their neighbors because Biden wanted to see that there is a democratic institute and democracies in the world come together in one platform and to show the world that America value these things. So therefore, if he is able to wash away very fast the Trump era of the mess he created in the Capitol Hall, I think the American can come back with also with the another feather have come up from the Myanmar development. They will definitely focus on issues like this. So I think if I have to see the Biden administration issues, I have to see it in a three different category: on the nuclear states relations, on the ambitious states coming up, on the regional balance of the issues in South Asia, like India and Pakistan at one angle, where India is becoming one of the major allies of the United States, where every administration, even the previous administration in November last year, they have already signed the PECA agreement with with India. So that's a clear indication that irrespective who is in the administration will always have a strong India because Indian potential is too strong and because of Indian rivalry with China. Let's make it very clear. It is a very clear policy where the American trying to harbor on the differences between China and India. So therefore, India has to be cautious on this. That's one of the issue which we can talk about it. So there will be lots of involvement with India in terms of India as a soft power. It's economically strong, politically strong, internationally respected, and militarily strong. So they wanted to promote India to counter the Chinese influence in this part of the world. And that's why even the classified document from the United States have come up, and they've been talking at length about the relation with India in 2018 and how they are going to strengthen this relation with India to counter the Chinese and to make India strong and a regional power, not only a regional power, a soft power, but also a global emerging power. And I think these are the issues we will focus. So therefore, this will have a major reflect on Pakistan. In Pakistan, in terms of the Pakistanis, they will be putting lots of pressure by the United States, especially after the American withdrawal from Afghanistan. It's going to have a major impact on the future relation between the United States and Pakistan. Though Pakistan will remain a partner with the US, but not that strong partner. And we have to differentiate between a partner and an ally. So Pakistan may have lots of pressure from the American to cut down the infrastructure or shut down the infrastructure of the terrorist organization, anti-India terrorist organization harboring in Pakistan territories. So therefore could be a major pressure on Pakistan on these issues because Pakistan important geopolitically to the United States will be reduced somehow because if the Taliban comes to power, then Pakistan still can play a part. But I think there's a new rearrangement. We are seeing now the development in Myanmar. We have to focus more on China, on the reflection of the future of China-American relations. That's why I will come back again and again to the Chinese part of it on this. And so I will say that America, in terms of the Afghanistan and Iran, the new administration also have lined up with the Iranian. They have already got Robert Kelly and they have got Maher, the two gentlemen who are in the American administration willing to engage with the Iranian. So if Iranian American come back reapproachment, this is going to play a major role in India dividend. There will be lots of India advantage, especially in Shah Bahar and the access to CIS. And if that happen overnight, so the sanction over Iran will be eased. So India overnight will turn the advantage into Shah Bahar and get the access to Afghanistan to avoid the Pakistanis' interest. So the economic, stability, the political stability in this part will definitely create an economic platform where they will be flourishing not only for the countries around, but also a stability will promote the economy for those countries. So Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, on those relations can be of a great importance if the American have a good relation with Iran and these issues. So I think this is going to be one of the a highly focused American administration on this restructuring its foreign policy toward the world in general and toward Asia in particular. So these are the issues that it can come. So what are the opportunities and the challenges? We have to also see how the administration look at the challenges happening here with the Chinese increasing their influence. I think the small state which I have mentioned, that India, they will be in India fold. Like if I talk of Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, there is a reapproachment in assertiveness of India in the Indian Ocean and also in the Bay of Bengal and also in Asia Pacific. So if India is able to bring the neighbors in South Asia together, along with the United States, which is now seeing India as a major stabilizing factor in South Asia, then we can see most of this country will fall into the Indian strategy and lean more toward India. But the cautious here is internationally how they see India. It's becoming more drifting away from its sovereign foreign policy toward the US camp, which could be also of a big challenge of India future relation and India future relation with China, with Russia, with even the neighboring country, Pakistan, and the rest of the world. Because not everybody likes the American policy because America follow their own interest. They don't care who is their friend or their enemy. It's a permanent interest where they are, they will follow. So therefore, I think if we are able to cope with the multipolar world, with the new American believe and acknowledging that there is no more unipolar world and they are able to play a role within the world as a multipolar platform, they will find their leadership role among the other nations, among the emerging power. India is one of them, China is one of them, Russia is one of them. So this is how the United States have to see itself. So that's why Biden administration, they are weak economically, they are weak internally, but they're strong militarily. They have to look into the new alliances, and we have to see the new alliances emerging in South Asia and emerging in South and Southeast Asia. So I think that is how the focus will be for the United States, at least for the coming 1 year of Biden administration, where he has to see where the NATO will be with the United States in issues relating to the China, and where India will be with the Quad in relation with the American foreign policy and interest, and countering terrorism, which is a tool that has been used for ages on pretext of fighting terrorism, but they have never actually fought the terrorism. We all know who created Al Qaeda, who created IS, and they themselves, the American Joe Biden himself acknowledged that they have created ISIS. He said it, and it is on record. Hillary Clinton said that we have created Al Qaeda. It's on record. She said we and the CIA, the ISI, and the Saudi intelligence we created. So they know. But when it comes to global outlook of the American foreign policy, they will always say, okay, we are for the fighting terrorism. So revival of terrorist organization in South Asia, it's going to be one of the major issues that every country has to fasten its belt to deal with it, because there is no selectivity or there in fighting terrorism. And that is the main crux problem with the United States policy in South Asia, because it has always supported one line of fighting terrorist organization that's fighting the United States, but ignoring the rest of the country's terrorist organization, where they're affecting, for example, India, where they're affecting Iran, where they're affecting the rest of the world. So you cannot join hands with countries which is promoting terrorism. So unless and until we do not expect the American administration under Biden to be a God hand or to be, the savior of the world. We have to see it in real manner. The United States cannot use the stick anymore and cannot invade countries anymore. It can create proxy wars in different parts of the world, but I think they will reach to an agreement that they cannot anymore destabilize this region, and the regime policy, the changing regime change policy of the United States have caused the American a lot, and they destroyed their own economy. And that's why economists in the United States feel that the United States should abandon the policy of regime change and creating wars and start creating a monster outside the country and fighting that monster. I think these are issues America has to see it from the reality of the 21st century. Having said, I think I do have 2 3 minutes more.
Yes, yes, you do.
Okay, I'll include it in 2 3 minutes only. So I think the restructuring of the American foreign policy and emphasizing on the democracy, again on human rights issues, going to be of allies with the NATO's, with the European countries, and with the democratic countries in the world like India. So therefore, we may see a new reapproachment, and the Biden administration will definitely have a leverage in South Asia with India in their hands, and also a countering terrorism mechanism and security of the Indian Ocean. It's a prime important because that is where the region is heading. What we are noticing now, the trends of the, radicalism, extremism being promoted in South and Southeast Asia, almost at next door to India. It's in Myanmar, it's in Bangladesh, it's in Pakistan, Afghanistan. This part of the world is become more dangerous. So the focus of the United States now more into the economic zone of South Asia and more into the Southeast Asia to save their own interest. How we have to look at it, we have to keep watching and keep waiting and see what will be the new development, because any kind of a new trends in this part of the world can derail whatever we have been talking about. For example, if tomorrow Israel attack Iran, for example, there will be an all-out war. So there is nobody safe in the West Asian region. Then there will be the whole region will be in turmoil. So we have to see the American interest at one angle, because America in South Asia or in Middle East have always been depending on the Israelis' dominance in the region, and also in the partners like the Saudi Arabia, who has been promoting an anti-Iran policy during Trump administration, and now Biden administration finding itself with $450 billion deal of the military from the Saudis and the Gulf state, put it in the American treasure, but still they cannot follow a policy of hiring an American army to fight their war. So therefore, America has to realize this. And I think I'll stop here and we will continue with our distinguished guest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Awad. That was a very holistic viewpoint of the geopolitics of India, of US and South Asia, and how a Republican president uh, tackles the sub-conventional warfare, which you clearly mentioned has been going on between India and Pakistan, and using China to counter India and Pakistan to counter India. We have to see that in the next couple of years. Our next speaker is Mr. Jiten Kumar Ojha, who's a former Joint Secretary in the Government of India. He's a geopolitical analyst and a visiting distinguished fellow, and we welcome him. And over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Pooja. I'm grateful to Tillotoma for this association, and they have been very audacious to have me on the panel, despite knowing my views very well. It's a delight to be sharing this panel also with so many esteemed speakers, guests, and some of my personal friends. I would like to say that I would not indulge in any crystal ball gazing. I know all of us are very eagerly looking forward to this subject. We are all interested. I would like to stick to some kind of structure, I would say, how things have been working in international relations as well as in the United States, especially in the United States. Dr. Awad has pointed it out that Americans are one people who are very keen about their national interest, and they have been least conceding towards that. They have not made any significant concessions towards others. I would also say that, yes, President Biden, the way he has taken over office, he has inspired a lot of hope. We all are looking forward to a phase of stability, especially after what we noticed during the era of his predecessor. and individuals do make a difference. But in United States, we see that it has never spoken in a single cohesive voice because of the institutional structures. One can say that there are three or four kind of entities who continue to influence and shape how US goes on to respond. One is national security establishment, consisting of State Department, Pentagon, CIA, and other intelligence agencies. Of course, then there are corporate lobbies. Military industrial complex can also be part of that. Others would be there. Third is human rights, civil society, climate change, and environmental lobbies and left liberal elements. And fourth is think tanks, pressure groups, professional lobbyists, and media, etc. All these come in for these things. So an incumbent president has to, of course, he or she has may have their own views, but they have to deal with all these four entities. And besides dealing with these four entities, they can influence them. They certainly get a lot of space. But this particular president, given his personality, we expect he's going to make a lot of difference the way he's going to take them. He's less likely to be unilateral. He's more expected to carry his team along with himself. We asked him who he is. Ambassador Sajjan Hart pointed it out. He is someone who knows India very well. He has played a very crucial role earlier also in our nuclear agreement with United States. And I've listened to some of his speeches, which he has made much before becoming president. And he has paid glowing tribute to India. So he is not only someone who's stable, conservative, and yet firm, but he is one person who's been very respectful towards allies. So all allies of United States are going to feel better in his presence. He is talking about democratic summits. So there we certainly have an advantage. India would be very high on his agenda. And whatever issues that people are mentioning right now, domestic issues of India, even if human rights lobbies, they bring a lot of pressure, one thing is very clear, that national security establishment of United States is very conscious that India is a very key ally. And I heard not one, but more than one occasion that he has quoted himself as well as quoted President Obama, that United States should be the best friend of India. So we have a lot of reason to be optimistic, and this is not purely based on conjectures or emotions or anything, but based on hard facts. If we see the current context or subcontext, China's ascendance and aggressive posture is very well known. China has been trying to send a signal to United States that United States should withdraw from this region. They have developed military capacity, technological capacity to threaten all American bases inside Asia. They have gone on to South America, not only Africa, not only Central Asia, but they have gone on to South America to secure monopolistic access to certain crucial resources, which can have long-term impact on technological innovations even in the United States, or their access to those crucial resources. I shall not get into that. So right now, as far as relationship with India is concerned, is based on two premises. Of course, they realize that China has gone far ahead, but India has to be a fulcrum of the policy of all liberal democracies of the world. India has to come up as a major power, so that expectation is there from India. And I'm sure for the first time, entire national security establishment, including State Department, including CIA, including Pentagon, all of them are on board. We mentioned on this very platform 2 weeks back that how until 2001, Americans were very little receptive to India's concerns on Pakistan's promotion of terrorism or organized crime. But after 9/11, things changed. And not only things have changed, these have picked up their own momentum. So what I'm going to say, that this momentum is likely to go on. This momentum has gained a pace, an irreversible pace. We are not going to see any change in that. Regarding his commitment to democracy, human rights, rule of law, good treatment of minorities, gender issues, climate peace, he has made it very clear. And I also expect, as Ambassador Sajjan Hart pointed it out, there will be discussion, but these discussions will be outside media. And I think that sometimes these discussions are in the best interest of democracies, or even democracy forum that we are talking about. These will have a lot to make some difference. And I think there's no harm, nothing is wrong in dealing with something of this nature. So I feel that these are not going to impact our relationship. Secondly, a lot of people say about Modi-Trump friendship. I think we have to acknowledge strength of our Prime Minister, that he was probably only statesman who was treated so very well by President Trump. President Trump didn't share that kind of relationship with either Canadian counterpart. We know how he has been speaking words about his French counterpart, with Australian Prime Minister, how things change. So we have to give credit to our Prime Minister. He's only statesman probably who got along with Mr. Trump also very well. And I'm confident he will find something, some way of getting along so well with even President Biden. Let us not forget that he was able to invite President Barack Obama more than once. So that I don't think is going to have any impact. A lot of people are saying about this having any shadow. I don't think that President Biden is also going to be carried away by any legacy of this nature. States are not, they do not engage on the basis of emotional friendship. They have very hard, cool, calm, calculated interests. And on that basis, we are very clear that on issue of national security or all security issues, India and US relationship will further gain strength. Quad is likely to get more this thing. TPP, we know that it has been now transition and it is likely to come up in a stronger way, and we will have far stronger role. Regarding Islamic radicalism and Pakistan-based terrorism is concerned, of course, this has to be contained. There's a increasing global awareness, I would say. India is only country which enjoys best of relationship with virtually all countries in West Asia. No other country has that kind of relationship. I would say even with Iran and not Soviet, but just Russia, we have a kind of goodwill, and this goodwill is something where we should aim at. I'm not only talking about what is going to happen, I will also mention a little bit what are opportunities which are available with us. So with Iran and Russia, if India can further enhance its goodwill, there would be some area of, I would say, some understanding on tactical issues, because real threat to entire global peace, I would say, or open societies, open states is China. Because unlike Russia, which was never an economic power, China is an economic power as well. And China has shown its inclination to challenge all, not only America, but all democracies almost everywhere. So given that, I suppose India's friendship with these two countries will be very useful, I would suppose, in further cementing our ties with United States. On certain issues, we have said that, a lot of media has played it out of proportion. I believe that no one is taking seriously Pakistan's claims on Kashmir. People realize that the radicalism has no space. A lot of people were making immense noise about Kashmir, that civil liberties were curtailed, people were put under inconvenience. Of course, this is something Indian state has to look after. Indian state has to take care, not because what America says, Indian state has to do it for sake of its own citizens. But I'm sure on these issues, we would have, we are still learning, we are still evolving. I believe that real issue in Kashmir is a kind of proxy war or covert war which Pakistan has sustained. There has to be greater cooperation on curbing organized crime, because this kind of infrastructure is dangerous for almost everyone, all civilized sin. Regarding corporate lobbies and military-industrial complex, very often they have gone against whatever has been envisaged by security establishment. We know just after Prime Minister Modi's second tenure, Robert Lighthizer, he withdrew GSP. Large number of elements within corporate sector, they have been saying that the kind of advantages which were being given to India, kind of concessions which were being given to India, there has not been enough return. India did not purchase fighter jets from United States, or India did not purchase nuclear reactors from United States. So these elements will continue to make some lobbies, but new USTR, Catherine Tai, is believed to be a very soft-natured thing. She is someone who's very accommodative and a very pleasant person believed to be, and who takes a much more, I would say, holistic view. And whatever issues, these are also likely to be addressed not in media. We don't expect any confrontation as such. We expect a much more sincere engagement. Regarding lobbies, pressure groups, media, etc., we have to be aware of one thing, that both Pakistan and China, they have their own ways of working, and they do not mind subverting people. They have been having lobbies, they have been engaging this thing. Both countries, Pakistan may not have very high GDP, but because of its clout over organized crime and other networks, they are able to have huge access to funds, and they are likely to engage more in lobbying. But one good news is that you would have seen that President Biden has signed a new executive order banning his people from accepting lucrative this thing. So lobbying, he has rather little come hard against lobbying. So we expect that there will be more matured and more well thought out decisions, and through sheer lobbying, we expect lesser and lesser manipulation of US policy in this region. And since he knows very well, the lobbyists are likely to have much lesser space. But nevertheless, you mentioned about some adverse propaganda which is going on. India has to be wary of this. India has to be careful about it. Not that we have to fritter our energies on engaging those people. Rather, we have to focus more on our domestic issues. I'll just conclude in a minute or two that what India has to do, we have to emerge as a credible power in this region and beyond. We have to come up as a reliable partner of United States. For this, we have to be domestically very strong. For a long time, we have been rather avoiding some of the governance restructuring and reforms which could overall enhance our capacity, our comprehensive national capacity. I think we have to pay serious attention to it. We realize that Western model of democracy is not entirely perfect. They have their own issues, they have their own challenges. We have to find more innovative ways of handling our own governance issues and agendas. Islamic radicalism in this part of the world has to be contained and crushed. There is no doubt about it. But we have to be very careful that only radicalism has to be contained. We have the largest Muslim population who are living as minority anywhere in the world. They are 90% of our Muslim population is a role model for entire Muslim world, I would say. And we have immense goodwill in whole of West Asia. So we have to be very careful that that government comes out with strong measures in terms of criminal justice system that appear fair and impartial to contain these things. This will enhance our further our credibility and give much lesser handle to our detractors who are outside. I would further say that popularity of our prime minister and this kind of friendship we have with United States is an opportunity which is very rare. Time has provided these opportunities. Both these factors have to harness in such a way that we domestically also become strong and we come up as a credible partner of the most powerful democracy in the world to usher in greater freedom and greater access to liberty and security to people universally. He will have issues on environmental issues, but climate peace. But over there also, he has been very receptive to the need of striking a balance between development as well as climate peace. So on this note, I conclude and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ojha. That was a concise and precise view of how we should look ahead, the relationship with the current and the new administration. So I have a few questions, and we do have young scholars and students with us who would like to pose questions. However, I'm going to just open my questions or comments for anybody, any of the three speakers to answer. We can president with the left orientation. How would that fit into the scheme of things of the current BJP prime minister, who is or the party shows the right wing bent of mind? My question is to Mr. Ojha. And I would also like to know that this is the question to Ambassador Sajanhar, that how would US now with the Mr. Biden at the helm of affairs control and curb the sub-conventional warfare? I mean, how are they going to strategically place on the game of diplomatic chess the pieces of India, China, Pakistan to counter one against the other, as it has been going on since Trump administration and Obama's administration? And you did mention that it's not US which is standing in our way, but China. But then again, the country is having veto, and it's like a strategic alliance. It's like an elite club. Nobody wants to expand an elite club. So how do you think in the coming years are we to see, do we really gain an access, or will there be an elite club within an already existing elite club? My questions, in case any student who wants to ask a question, please you can put it in the chat box, and I can invite you to ask your question.
Regarding this question, you see, I study national security, and I have been mentioning not once but several occasions that welfare state is a very integral component of national security. This, stereotype classifications of left and right, I think, in my perception, these have become very obsolete. We should come out of it. I always maintain that at the base of the pyramid of national security, what lies is high quality human resource. And when you talk about high quality human resource, You talk about, providing access to nutrition, sanitation, healthcare, etc. When we talk, he has a little left leaning or liberal leaning. Of course, he's Democrat. And, I would say that welfare state, when it came in these Western democracies, they ushered in just after Second World War. Just during Second World War itself, we started for the first time Western leaders talking about providing universal access to housing, universal healthcare, universal this thing. So I don't see much of a contradiction. Our Prime Minister has been very clear on national security of India, and when he talks about national security, it's not only war but bolstering comprehensive national capacity of India. And when we talk about comprehensive national capacity of India, certainly people have to be at the center. Focus has to be on people. I'm not saying we should create, an army of people who are just sucking resources. No, we empower them. You're talking about skill, etc. Of course, these are visions. We have not been able to rather walk the talk. There's no doubt about it. We have to improve our institutional capacity, but I see no contradiction at all if we pay focus on national security and try to build high quality human resource and harness this human resource towards productive purposes. See that this human resource is not idle. We harness this to higher level of economic productivity, convert it into a national strength or a national asset. I see no contradiction at all. So I think both
Wonderful.
of them can get along well.
So, Ambassador Sajanhar, if you could answer.
Yeah, surely, surely. Thank you very much, Pooja, for this question. I'll respond to it. And please tell me if I have understood it correctly. Basically, your question was, how is it that India, because you have a veto wielding power which is against India's membership, not only of the UN Security Council, but even we've found of the Nuclear Suppliers Group. The other three export control arrangements, India has become a member of that because China was not there. China is a member of NSG, and that is why India is not able to gain access to NSG. Now, we also need to sort of, go back to, I'll take you back to 2008, when the discussions at the IAEA were going on about a unique waiver to India for the US-India nuclear deal, that a country that has not signed the non-proliferation treaty will also be allowed to engage, will be given a unique waiver to engage in international commerce in nuclear material and nuclear technology. This was something absolutely undone so far. And again, it was the same culprit, China, which was standing in the way of providing this unique waiver to India. And at that time, it was George W. Bush who picked up the telephone and spoke to Hu Jintao and told China that they should withdraw their opposition, they should withdraw their reservation as far as this unique waiver is concerned. So, when America was powerful enough, it could exercise its authority, its strength in favor of India. It did at that time, and I think it was, doing the heavy lifting for India, which was extremely good. Now, there were questions raised when India's membership of NSG was being discussed as to why did President Barack Obama at that time did not speak to Xi Jinping. And my view is, I think 2008 is not 2016 when these discussions took place. Coming to the UNSC issue that you have mentioned, Pooja, I think what the Prime Minister mentioned at the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, that there is a crisis of confidence in the United Nations because the United Nations is not able to achieve what its mandate tells it to do. And that is because the United Nations, particularly the Security Council, is working on the basis of structures that were decided, that were relevant to 1945, when there were just about 50 members of the UN system. Today we have 193 members. So the membership has increased, but the structures have not changed. So I think the structures need to change. We have been working on that. We have been trying to get there. I don't want to get into technicalities as to how we can go to the General Assembly and try to get an approval from there, even if there is an opposition from a permanent member of the UN Security Council. But another point I would mention, which has been tangentially mentioned by some, is that if the United Nations does not change, and if the UN Security Council does not change, it will lose its relevance. And there will be alternative bodies, plurilateral bodies that will come up, which will start taking decisions which actually should be taken under the roofs of the United Nations. And here we have seen that, we have the G7 body, G7 grouping. This time, even last year, President Trump had invited Mr. Modi, the Australian Prime Minister, and the South Korean President. Of course, last September, the G7 meeting did not take place, but this time it is taking place in Cornwall in UK, United Kingdom, in June. And all these three leaders have been invited. So it becomes a G10, or some people are calling a D10, the getting together of the 10 democracies. So the point I want to make here is that either the United Nations reforms itself, or there will be challenge to its authority because it is not delivering what it was expected to deliver. Let me also, if you permit, Pooja, just a couple of points, to what Jitendra mentioned, and he responded to it extremely well. I want to give it a different perspective. You mentioned that Mr. Biden is a Democrat, left-leaning, and Mr. Modi is right of the center. I think, there have also been questions that were earlier, and Jitendra referred to them. Modi was seen to be too close to President Trump. I think we need to realize that when Mr. Modi was reaching out, he was reaching out to the President of the United States. He was not reaching out to any individual. He had equally good, if not better, relations with Barack Obama. In 2.5 years, they met 9 times. In 2.5 years with Mr. Obama, they had 3 summits. For the first time, Obama was invited as the chief guest to India's Republic Day. That is, a US president was invited. For the first time, a US president visited India twice in his tenure. That was Obama. The point here I'm making here is that when the Prime Minister of India relates to someone, it's not because of who he or she is. It is, he's relating, he is associating himself with the president of that country. So this time also, and of course, Mr. Modi and Joe Biden, they go back a long time. I mentioned about the fact that Joe Biden had hosted a lunch for him in 2014 when he had gone there. In 2016, when he addressed the joint session of the Congress, Joe Biden was vice president and chair of the Senate. So they know each other. And Mr. Biden is not, I would not call him left of the center. He's a centrist. There are others who are left of the center, the progressives in his party. And I think he will have a bit of a challenge in terms of dealing with those elements also. But he's a man of consensus. So I think he'll be able to build that consensus. Thank you very much.
I'll just add to, if you permit me, I'll just add to Ambassador. He certainly put across ideas brilliantly and said more than what I could have clarified. You see, he is being a Democrat. President Biden has concern over erosion of integrity of institutions, curb on media freedom, judicial freedom, and all these are issues. I don't think that these are issues which impact others. These issues impact us. These are domestic issues, and there has to be, from civil society of India, from intelligentsia, there has to be very bipartisan and impartial perspective on this. It's not that it impacts others. So on these issues, we should not assume that, and the world is very different what it was 20 years back. We are a formidable global power. Both India needs United States also needs India. It's not that it's a situation of 1960s or 70s, we were dependent on this. So these issues we have to handle for our own strength, for our own interests, not that these issues impact others. So, but yes, we are going through a process of transition. We are evolving. There were certain ways of working, and it's not easy for democracies to preside over major changes when you are bringing about change. Not that everything happens for good or happens in perfect way. So we are negotiating with these challenges. I'm sure India's intelligentsia, India's strategic community is also agitating to our policymakers, and we will certainly find an equilibrium. If India has to come up as a major democratic power, a major global power, we are different from others. We have to refine quality of our democracy. If we cannot afford to dilute it, but then we have to be careful. You also mentioned about some sub-conventional and other wars. My core area of specialization was once irregular warfare and subversion. So this subversive forces, subversive elements have been there. We have to have adequate capacity. I'm not describing anyone as anything. I'm saying that as a state, we have to have adequate capacity to tide over these challenges, these issues, and I'm sure we will be able to do it. We need not worry. And as Ambassador pointed it out, even if they have any concerns, those concerns will be discussed outside media glare. But one thing is clear, that the entire West and entire democratic world has acknowledged that all these years they had been promoting Pakistan in pursuit of their so-called great game objectives in this region to contain Russia. Those objectives are obsolete, and promotion of radicalism is dangerous for everyone. So on that area, there is clarity. But on the other hand, India's composite culture, India's harmonious secular culture has to be there. But this secularism within the country too cannot be exploited for preaching hatred against anyone. So our criminal justice system has to come to a very high level. So these are our own domestic challenges, and I don't think we need to be apprehensive. And secondly, also, wherever needed, we have to speak up even to the United States, like our relationship with Iran and Russia. I've been very clear that we have shared a strong goodwill. Whenever needed, we must tell the United States also that these interests, these engagements are very crucial. I'm not saying this is the government's view or anybody's views, but as an independent researcher, this is what we believe, that we have to come up, we have said, look, these interests serves everyone. And our having these kind of engagements with even those countries to whom United States cannot talk with, or United States cannot engage, is in long-term interest of everyone. So this is what I would like to say. We are living in a different world. Our objectives, our challenges, our priorities are different, and expectations are also different. And I'm sure we are in process of transition. We will do well, and we have to look up to this transition in the United States with a lot of optimism and confidence both.
Wonderful. Um, we have a student, Ayan Ali, who has questions for all our speakers. So, Ayan, please introduce yourself and please put up your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everyone, to all the distinguished speakers. So I have questions for all three of you. So my first question is for Ambassador. Sir, as you were talking about Quad, so we all know that Quad is an upcoming concept to counter China in Indo-Pacific. Is it possible for India to be at the driver's seat of the Quad, with Japan and Australia being a part of the Belt Road Initiative of China? And China still remains a very important market for American investors. So can Quad become a concrete concept in near future? And also, given the recent statements issued from Russia. Second question is for Dr. Wail Awad. Sir, you talked about multipolar world and strategic autonomy as a traditional principle for India's foreign policy. So I would like to know your views regarding SARC, and can it be regenerated? Can we reinvent it? And my last question is for Mr. Oja. So you talked about President Biden's alliance-oriented approach. As we know that EU last year had secured a trade deal with China, ignoring US concerns. Do you believe that given EU's, and specifically Germany's, high economic stakes with China, does EU has the stomach to take a hard stand against China along with USA? Thank you. So my name is Ayan Ali. I am a second year student from Jamia Millia Islamia. Ma'am just taught me disaster management, and she was previously teaching me public administration. So I'm really honored and delighted to be hearing all the distinguished speakers. And I would like to thank ma'am because she was the one who provided me with the link and relevant information for today's webinar. Thank you.
We can start with Ambassador and moving on to Dr. Awad and followed by Mr. Roja.
Okay, thank you very much. And so, thank you very much, Madam Chair, because we owe these questions to you since you are the one who asked Ayan Ali to come and participate in this conference. So, Ayan, your question about the Quad, very interesting, as of course the other two also are. But let me respond to the Quad question. I agree with you, as you have mentioned, Quad is a work in progress. But as you would have seen, it has made significant progress over the last few years. I don't want to go into the Quad that was created in the aftermath of the tsunami in 2004, because that was the first incarnation, that was a different history. But I'm talking about the Quad which came into being in 2017 in Manila in November. So after that, as you are aware, that those meetings took place at the level of Joint Secretary, which you would see, you would agree, is at a junior mid-level. But the first time that it was upgraded to a ministerial level was in September 2019 on the margins of the UN General Assembly in New York. And then it was upgraded very significantly in terms of the substantive content of the discussions and also the timing. And that was the next meeting, which took place on 6th October in Tokyo. Now, mind you that the coronavirus pandemic was raging at its highest intensity. And still all the four foreign ministers, Dr. Jaishankar from India, Mike Pompeo from US, Marisa Payne from Australia came to Japan to have this interaction, 2-3 hours interaction. So basically, I think symbolically, it was mentioning as to what is the importance that they attach to this. You would also have read that when Marisa Payne went back to Australia, she had to undergo the mandatory 2-week quarantine. So again, that underlines and emphasizes the importance, the significance that they attach to this. Of course, Mike Pompeo in that meeting, as also in other meetings, has been talking about the pushback against China. But the other three countries have been, so to say, hedging their bets. No one mentioned China by name, but it was very, very clear when they're talking about a free and open Indo-Pacific and a resolution of disputes through dialogue and on the base respect for international law and the UN Convention on Law of the Sea, etc., etc. So that is what is there, that these four countries have come together. Your question is, can India be in the leadership role because Japan and Australia are members of BRI? Let me also mention, I think you are aware, and I don't need really to take it forward, what the Australian ambassador what the Chinese ambassador in Canberra had mentioned, that Australia is like a used chewing gum that is stuck on the bottom of your shoe. So, the relations between China and Australia and China and Japan, because they are threatening on Senkaku Islands or so. So the relations, by virtue of the fact that they are members of BRI, is not, doesn't take it very far that they are, so to say, in an embrace with each other. You would also have noticed that China has given a list of 14 demands that, it's like from the medieval ages, that it is a superior power giving a charter of demands to subordinate power, that this is what you have to do, this is what you have to concede. And there are things like allow Huawei to come in, this interference of foreign powers into your country, you have to go against that. So, the relations there are truly at rock bottom between these two, between Australia and China, and also between Japan and China. Not only are these two countries members of BRI, but you would notice that they have very recently signed on the RCEP also. So, but that also does not take away from the importance of the fact that they are also members of Quad. They want to have a pushback against China. all the four countries need to do it together. It is, I would say, it is work in progress. I agree with you that it is sort of, but much progress has been made at the October 6th meeting, because I think the Quad does not plan to remain just as Quad. They want to have a Quad plus, a Quad plus plus, more members. And more members could come from Europe, it could come from France has come out with its Indo-Pacific strategy. UK should be coming out soon with its Indo-Pacific strategy. Germany also to some extent, but Germany would be a reluctant partner there. It seems to be hedging its bets. But I think Quad would also like members from ASEAN. Now, the whole of ASEAN will definitely not be a part, because there are countries like Laos and Cambodia which are heavily indebted to China. But I think there would be other countries like Vietnam, like Philippines, like Indonesia, which could look positively at becoming members of Quad. And then it has been decided not really to make it as a security architecture, but have a much broader canvas on which they can work, whether it is creating infrastructure, whether it is creating, health cooperation with each other, whether it is on 5G, that you can have, you can work together on technology, on innovation, so on disaster management, disaster resilient infrastructure. So across the board, there are a large number of areas where you can work together. Also, I would like to mention, I'm sure you are aware of that, that when the coronavirus pandemic was going on, or it is still going on, we are still not through it, but over the last many months, at the vice minister level, that means at India's foreign secretary level, there have been meetings of virtual meetings, of course, of the Quad, plus their counterparts from Vietnam, from New Zealand, and from Republic of Korea. So we already see a Quad plus in certain designated areas. So to cut my answer short here, Quad is work in progress. It needs to expand. The participation of the United States is very important. And I'm very happy to note that the Biden administration has said that we are going to continue the Indo-Pacific initiative of the Trump administration, the Quad initiative of the Trump administration. We need to expand the Quad. So, exactly what I'm saying. I think for all these things, the Biden administration is on board. And they also say that it needs to get more teeth. It needs to get, become a more robust organization. So all the countries have to share responsibility and have to come together. Thank you.
Dr. Wael, Ahmed, if you could respond to Ayan.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a very important question, and SAARC remain one of the poorest core of any group association that have been neglected and have not been developed, despite the fact that it is also constitute a large number of population, large number of unemployment. And I think COVID-19 has aggravated the situation, and it has always been hijacked by India and Pakistan bilateral relation. We have not seen any progress moving forward for so many years. But I think of recently, India have started finding connectivity more with the SAARC region in different platform. That is one, is to strengthen its assertiveness of its presence in this part of the world and in the Indian Ocean. And the second part is to counter the Chinese influence, where the Chinese have been trying to influence these countries into their, the initiative of One Belt, One Road initiative of there will be many of the SAARC region countries are involved. So there will be a kind of reapproachment. Yes, the revival of SAARC is very much important for the whole world, because now if you look at the figure of the number of unemployed, they have to see that it has, the COVID-19 have increased more than 80 million unemployed people. And imagine if this workforce is to reckon with, it become a kind of a vulnerable to sort of other activities that can create instability and social unrest in most of these countries. So therefore, An all South Asian approach is a must. And as a must, they have to keep the political differences at one stage and work on other issues of where needed. Because India will always say Pakistan is harboring terrorists and they are also supporting terrorism. And there is also, all whenever there's discussion of bilateral issue, India would say it's not a political platform, it's an economical platform. If it is an economical platform, let's work it in economically, and also which is linked to security and also to counter terrorism. If these are the issues, the country's concerns and members can join hands in doing it. So I think India can play a major role, and which India is already playing. It's the largest economy in the region. India is playing the vaccine diplomacy, also giving the neighbors the vaccines and the priorities for the neighbor. In terms of investment, also they have been focusing on this. I think all this kind of reapproachment, it is possible with the new connectivity, because India itself is now realizing that uh, the neighbor feel that India dominance, being the largest, has always been dominant, but that's why they give rooms to Chinese to infiltrate into their own territories. But I think of lately they have realized that their destiny linked to India. So therefore, India now has to play the responsible state in this part of the world in bringing them together and revival of SAARC to see if there is a stability in this part, but then prosperity can happen. And I think if we look individually, we can see Nepal, maybe political instability, but if we look economically at Bangladesh, still having the highest number of economic rates. So I think all these small country can come together and join hand with India and looking for a better future economically at least.
Can
Yes,
I?
Pooja.
Mr. Oja, if you could answer to
Yes,
Ayan.
yes. I will answer to Ayan. I was very tempted to respond to what my friend Dr. Awad has said. I shall come down to that. Ayan, regarding this, you are raising a very valid question. China is far too closely integrated economically with large number of countries, and especially Europe and EU is one this thing, and complete decoupling or taking a hard stand is will be a little difficult, and it will have I would say it will invite a lot of discomfort all around. And Germany is one country, as Ambassador also has pointed out, they have been very reluctant because they are far too closely integrated. I've been reading that US strategists and experts, they have been saying that the whole German, this generation, not German, European generation, they have become anti-war, and they are far too soft they have become as far as countering China's global domination is concerned. But I suppose that if situation crosses certain threshold limit, I think EU will have to come around. If America, all said and done, yes, alliances are important. They are all are part of NATO. Even before Trump, Americans have been saying that they are providing universal security to everyone. With anyone else has not been responding, especially Europe has not been responding. They have been getting this security cover from United States free of cost. So if they take this position a little tough, and I'm sure if they issue some kind of whip or issue their diktat, assert themselves, EU will have to modify itself. This is what my assessment would be. Regarding, I'm tempted to make a little this thing to what Dr. Awad said. Pooja, can I go ahead? Just take a minute or so.
Sure.
Dr. Awad, this is the SAARC region. I always believe that civilization, as a civilization, India was far bigger than China. An entire SAARC and beyond, even up to Indonesia, what we call is Indo-Asia. We had our common values, etc. For whatever reasons, even when Islam came, they tried to find out their equilibrium with the local value systems. A lot of changes happened, isn't it? That's a very different question. But then West had started very consciously promoting this kind of fracture, this kind of divide. And we know how they plotted, conspired this kind of partition for their own strategic interests, and not only conspired this partition, they kept on supporting Pakistan at every platform. They kept on ensuring that this divide remains permanent. And naturally, this has created a lot of scares, and I think India has to deal with strategically. But regarding this allegation of terrorism, it's not just based on imagination. It is based on very hard facts. That Osama bin Laden was caught here. Terror factories they are running. 84% of the global drug is manufactured in Afghanistan. They have been brainwashing and poisoning generations of people. Yes. sane people, normal people, educated people in Pakistan also look up to India. So we have to have this larger strategic vision, but we cannot afford this kind of cohesion. And naturally, everything has some action and reaction and all these things. So yes, we have to act strategically. There is no doubt about it. But as far as this charge of terrorism is concerned, it is not only our charge. Even the best CIA experts who have now left this thing, they have become political sociologists, academics, they have been pointing it out how they have been running. Pakistanis have been running network in Luton to Bradford to various cities in Europe, etc. And they have been monopolizing this drug and organized crime network in a manner that it has become very difficult to dismantle that. So I suppose that right now the issue is not SARC. Right now the issue is genuine democratization in Pakistan. The right now issue is genuine de-radicalization everywhere. And right now I would say in India also the issue is building a very, very efficient and cohesive criminal justice system and also social cohesion. And it has to be a collective effort. If these things happen, I'm sure SARC can come out of it. Pakistan did not get this nuclear technology, it did not steal it without concurrence and some degree of collusion from certain forces who are our friends today. So this is what it shows, that the West had a somewhat very short-sighted elements in West, I wouldn't say West, elements in West had very short-sighted and narrow myopic views. Because earlier also I discussed that, large sections of civil society and even so-called left liberal elements within America, for a long time, they remained very positive towards India. But later on, only things changed. But this is what I believe, that yes, we have to be strategic perspective, but Pakistan's collusion, support, patronization of terrorism and organized crime is a far more serious business. I think everybody has to come on board. And the day we are able to democratize and de-radicalize Pakistan, I'm sure things will change for everybody in this region and beyond. Thank you, Pooja.
Thank you, Mr. Ojas. I believe, are there any other questions? I'm informed Ravina Richards, she has a question. So Ravina, if you could unmute yourself and put up your question.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ravina Richards. I'm a PhD scholar in the Department of Political Science, Jamia Millia Islamia, under Pooja ma'am. My question is to Ambassador Ashok sir. With respect to Pyongyang, will Biden pressurize to denuclearize and maintain relation with Seoul? Also, will the formation of a trilateral approach get towards the restoration of its relation with Tokyo?
I see. Okay, so the first question, I think you are asking about the nuclearization or denuclearization of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Pyongyang, right?
Yes,
and how will that impact upon the relations with the Republic of Korea? So I feel that, what Biden has said is that he's going to revive the alliances with the East Asian countries. So you would recall that, Biden's first string of telephone calls were to the European partners, and the second were to the East Asian partners, that is to the Japanese Prime Minister Suga and to President Moon. I think what is going to happen is that Republic of Korea and the United States are going to work together, again, much more respectfully and in much more collegial manner. You would recall that when Trump had met Kim Jong-un, then he had even agreed with Kim that there would be no further exercises in that area with the forces, 27,000 of the US troops that are based there. And with the South Korean troops, there would be no further exercises because it is just sending a wrong signal to DPRK. And this was done even without consulting the South Koreans. So I think these sort of things are not going to happen. There is going to be very good equation, good understanding, good synergy between the two sides. And then they will, in terms of applying pressure on Pyongyang and on President Kim Jong-un, that is, or the Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un, because he doesn't, I think, have the title of the president. So that will happen, that will be taken forward. So the approach will be very, very different from the approach that President Trump had in terms of having high profile summits and meetings between the two leaders. Is going to be very different. It's going to work at the operational, official level and then taking it forward. The second question is in terms of, if I understand correctly, in terms of the trilateral cooperation, it would be between ROK, Japan, and the United States. Do I understand correctly, Ravina?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I think here there is, both of them are alliance partners as far as the United States is concerned. And both of them, the United States maintains troops on the soil of both these countries. Now we know that there are problems as far as these two countries are concerned. And the United States will definitely try its very best that, these are legacy issues from the Second World War in terms of how the Japanese treated the South Korean people, particularly the South Korean women, how they were treated. And that is what still rankles, and that is what is still being carried forward. So I think the efforts will continue that the relations between Japan and South Korea get normalized, and the relations between these three alliance partners along with Australia, they also strengthen. And if we are talking about the expansion of the Quad, then the Republic of Korea also becomes a very attractive partner for the Quad. So I think the efforts and the attempt will definitely be made towards progressively lessening the distrust and the fraught relations between Republic of Korea and Japan, and having normal relations between all these three countries. I hope I've answered your questions, Ravina, to the extent that I understood them. Thank you very much.
Dr. Awad, you wanted to speak something. I thought you raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a point that the policy of India toward Pakistan have never changed. Pakistan, as they say, is a neighbor. You can't choose your neighbor. So they have been talking to each other in good and bad time. Maybe the changing on the, I didn't see, and talked of revival of the SAARC region, and revival in terms of economy and security. So if Pakistan understands the importance of the economic revival of SAARC and the advantage that the whole region can have, I think most of the neighboring countries will be more than happy to accommodate. Though bilateral political issue will remain, between India and the composite dialogue and Pakistan, when time comes, when will you allow? But I think ultimately, people has to sit down and talk together, because you cannot move forward if you don't move all together. That's my point. And
while, Awad, before you leave, and with your permission, Madam Chair, this is such a subject, this is such an issue that we can really continue to talk, because, when you're saying that, has India not made all the efforts from, let's say, May 26, 2014, when Nawaz Sharif was here. Yes. After that, we met in Ufa in July 2015. We said, let us start the dialogue. Who went back on it? Prime Minister Modi traveled to Islamabad and to Rawalpindi on December 25th, 2015, again, basically to kickstart this conversation. Mr. Modi has that authority to be able to move forward and reach out to Pakistan. But all these issues have been spurned, not because of what India is or what India does, but what the situation, what is the power center in Pakistan. Again, you are going, and I don't want to...
We are in agreement. We are in agreement. I have no problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to add a little bit to what Ambassador has said. I have a different view, and this is entirely my view. If more we engage this kind of establishment in Pakistan, greater legitimacy we are going to accord to a kind of syndicate which has no loyalty, no commitment to its own people. It has been hoodwinking its people, brazenly patronizing, I would say, organized crime and terrorism, both to do what? To perpetuate itself in power, have territory, have some kind of global clout. I believe, India should spearhead larger dialogue on internal power structure in Pakistan, wherever you are. I'm not saying anywhere, not targeting Pakistan. In this kind of globalized world, you cannot preach hatred against anyone. It's not that they are preaching hatred only against Hindus and others. In 71, they started hating Bengalis. Now Ahmadiyas are non-Muslims. Shias are, they describe them as the biggest kafirs of Kainat. Dawoodi Bohras are at the receiving end. Who are they actually supporting? Whom are they representing? It's a very small syndicate. It's a very dangerous kind of state. With concurrence of some of their patrons, they managed to acquire nuclear power, and they are virtually blackmailing the whole world. And now they have changed their masters very quietly. The moment it became inconvenient for the West, they have quietly shifted their loyalty to China. So I suppose the real issue in India and Pakistan, this is my view, very briefly, I would say, is not bilateralism, because the moment this bilateralism goes, we are ignoring a very dangerous issue which threatens everyone. Real issue is the internal political and power structure within Pakistan. Let there be democratization, let there be respect for human rights and dignity everywhere. Then certainly we should talk about it. But sadly, we are facing some degree of criticism within our country, because Pakistan, all said and done, the ruling syndicate of Pakistan, they have perfected a different way of operating and dealing with things. With very small number of people, they can cause far more disturbances. They are biggest threat to not Pakistan I'm talking about, or people of Pakistan. I'm talking about the ruling syndicate or the ruling clique within Pakistan. So I think this is a very complicated issue. Maybe my views are a little different, but humanization of Pakistan and de-radicalization of Pakistan has to be one of the biggest global agendas. And Pooja.
Thank you, Mr. Oja. And with that, we come to an end of this wonderful, interactive, enlightening, absolutely phenomenal session. On behalf of Tilotoma Foundation, I thank all our distinguished panelists, Ambassador Sajanhar, Dr. Awad, Mr. Oja, for taking out the time and deliberating on very crucial matters and very pertinent matters that we are yet to see and yet to witness, and making predictions of some sort. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Thank you to our students and scholars who've joined and asked wonderful questions, very informative questions. And hopefully we will continue the discussion further on some other day.
And a big thank you to the chair
Oh, Dr. Wad.
for having so
you.
beautifully conducted the program.